Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of Space for Life. And I think you better buckle up today because I think we're going to have an incredible conversation and hear an amazing story that I think will be exciting to hear, but I think it's going to also be challenging to us in so many ways. So my special guest today is Kim Sorrelle, and Kim and I have just gotten to know each other a little bit. And she's the director of Rays of Hope International, and she's also an author of two different books. So she's a bit ahead of me in this authoring world. Her first book, Cry Until You Laugh, will detail a journey that you're going to hear about in a few minutes. So I probably won't go any further on that. I'll let her tell that story. And then her most recent book, which tells perhaps kind of chapter 2 of that story, as I sense it, is called Love Is. And so, Kim, I'm so excited to have you on Space for Life and so excited to kind of hear the breadth of the story because it's kind of beyond imagination as I hear it. So I'm so interested to hear the things that have spurred you, and I am confident it's going to challenge all of us that are listening to it. So welcome to Space for Life, Kim.
Thank you, Tommy. It is great to be here. I appreciate this so much. I appreciate you. Your podcast should be on everybody's list. It's really good, very powerful, and hopefully this will be another powerful episode for you.
Oh, man, I'm thinking I have no question about it. So, you have so much to share. I mean, you have this amazing story, but beyond just an amazing story, a lot of people have amazing stories. You have a really important message with some substance behind it. So I'm going to kind of try to get out of your way, although I have a hard time doing that in a podcast, but I'm going to try to get out of your way. And I'd love for you to just tell the parts of your story that you want to tell.
Sure. Well, I married a man who I met May of my senior year of high school and asked to marry me 10 days later. And he said yes. And we got married less than a year later. And against all odds, I had the greatest marriage. He was a wonderful guy, just true blue. He was the guy that at 5:00 in the morning was on his face before God, just praying and reading the Bible and reading a devotional, and just this incredible guy. We had so much fun together. He was wonderful. And so life went on. We had kids, etc. And then I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And the word cancer just kind of smacks you across the face. It just hits you in the gut. Like you never want to hear those words. And I was 47 years old, and I thought I was way too young to be dealing with this. And so in fact, when I found out over the phone that I got a phone call from the doctor's office telling me that I had cancer on a Friday afternoon at 3:00. And so I couldn't even call back and ask questions. I couldn't do anything. And I called my husband. He was at work, and it seemed like he was home in seconds. And he did the exact right thing. If anybody's ever in this position, this is the exact right thing to do. He just held me. He just held me, and we prayed together, and he just held me, and that was so great. So I started dealing.
Did the doctor leave any details beyond you have cancer?
None. It was just, hey, the biopsy came back. If you have cancer, we'll call on Tuesday. Like, oh my word. Yeah. It was an interesting weekend. I tried not to look stuff up online because I was afraid of what I'd see, because there are, several types of breast cancer. And so fortunately mine was caught early. And so that was a good thing. So I started dealing with it all, and, surgeries and all the stuff that goes along with it. And I was still dealing with it. Well, I was diagnosed September of that year. And a few weeks later, my husband started having stomach pain. And so he went to the doctor, and the doctor said, "Oh, you're just nervous because of Kim. Don't worry about it. Just take some Rolaids, or something." Well, he was still uncomfortable in November. So he went back to the doctor 2 months later, and the doctor said the same thing. I really think it's just a nervous stomach bug, but did make an appointment for him at a gastro guy. So the day after his appointment with the gastro person, I was having surgery. I was having a complete hysterectomy and I was having a colonoscopy. And then because the kind of breast cancer I had could go with other kinds of cancer or hormone receptors, whatever. And so if anybody's had a colonoscopy, you know that you don't leave your bathroom the day before. And I'm always the mouth, right? Like I would be the one at the doctor's office going, "You got to find something like this guy. He's in pain, help him out." And so I would just die waiting for him to come back from the doctor's office to find out what he said. He saw a PA. It was in January. So it took us 2 months to get an appointment. And he saw a PA and she said, "Yeah, it's just a nervous stomach." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, why didn't you say, do something, whatever." But he didn't. And so here we were with the same diagnosis. So the next day I had surgery and they found some bladder cancer while they were doing the other cancer, which that was a blessing that they found that. And so my recovery was a little tougher. So a week later, I'm still wearing elastic waist pants and laying in bed watching Grey's Anatomy reruns. And I woke up, my husband was awake and he just was miserable. And I said, "That's it. Go to the ER. At least they'll run a test, they'll do something." So he did. So he drove himself to the emergency. And I waited for a phone call. My husband was a rule follower. And so if it said no cell phones, he was not going to have his cell phone on. So I'm waiting and waiting for a call. Finally, he calls me and he said, "Well, I guess they're going to keep me overnight." And I'm like, "Keep you overnight? They don't keep anybody overnight. What do you mean keep you overnight?" And so I threw on real people clothes and I hopped in my car and then my Vicodin-induced state drove as fast as I could to the hospital. And I was almost there and my phone rang again. And he said, "I guess there's a mass on my liver." And I'm like,
Oh,
"Your liver? What do you mean? What is this?" And so I parked and I ran in holding all sore parts of my body. And they told me where he was, and he was behind a curtain, and I'm sobbing. I'm just sobbing. And I throw open the curtain, and he's just sitting there like nothing is happening, just sitting on the edge of the bed, just nothing is happening. And he said, "Listen, I am not going to invite you out anymore if this is the way you're going to behave." And I said, "You are not allowed to be funny right now." But yeah, so it took a couple days to get a diagnosis. Most cancers are like that. They need to run tests and do biopsies and the things that they do. And so a few days later, we found out that he had pancreatic cancer. And pancreatic cancer is bad. And it was stage 4, it was in his liver, obviously, and in his abdominal wall. And it was attacking him pretty good. And so we just prayed. We said, "Lord, either give us a miracle like you did the lame and the blind and the deaf, or the ultimate miracle of heaven, but please don't let him suffer. Please don't let him suffer." And God honored that prayer. The doctor told us probably a year and maybe longer. He was 51 and 6'3" and 175 pounds and so fit, and he ate good and he worked out a lot, and he did eat good, although he did think that donuts were the 5th food group. But other than that, he healthy. And so we thought he'd be around for a while, and we had a great 6 weeks together. And
6 weeks.
6 weeks. Yeah.
Wow.
But I'll tell you, it was God's mercy and an answer to our prayers, because we had a great 6 weeks. we're watching Cash Cab and we're, hanging out together and playing Jim Rummy or whatever, all the stuff that we were doing, just being together. And Sunday morning, I woke up because we made a sound, we made a noise, and it woke me up. And he was in pain. And up until then, he hadn't been. We had great palliative care, great hospice, and they were managing his pain great. So he wasn't in pain. So he was in pain. So I called the hospice nurse and she was there in a flash and she gave him more morphine. And then he was sitting on the edge of the bed and I was holding him from behind because I didn't want him to fall off the bed. And she's in our bedroom on the phone and she's making phone calls. And I said, what's going on? Do I call my kids? What do I do? And she's, no, you've got lots of time. You got lots of time. And I could just feel his agony. And I said, are you sure? Like, are you sure I shouldn't call my kids? And she's ordering a hospital bed and a commode and, whatever. We didn't have any equipment up until that moment. And so she said, no, I'm sure of it. You've got, weeks, maybe even a couple months, but don't worry about it. But I'm holding him and I was so connected. Our hearts were just so connected that I knew that he was just in horrible pain. So I whispered in his ear, just go. And that was it. I never took another breath.
Oh gosh, I'm so sorry. That's like it's heartbreaking to hear.
Yeah.
I mean, so fast for love of your life like that.
Yeah. But he was a great husband and a great dad. And I've never been angry at him for leaving. I mean, not that that would do me any good, but I can't begrudge him. Like he was welcomed into heaven, I'm sure. He knew where he was going. And for him to not suffer until the end, that was definitely an answer to prayer. And whether I had him for another couple months or not, I mean, we knew that really it was inevitable, unfortunately. And so I'm happy for him. He's in heaven. He never is going to be sick again. No more pain. No more paying bills. No more any of that stuff. So I say, good for you, baby. Good for him. And sad for me, but I'm happy.
Well, you know a little bit of our journey from us connecting, and our daughter's journey with the cancer was 6.5 years with stage 4 kidney cancer. And in that different way, God giving us those 6.5 years and giving her those 6.5 years and giving her the blessing and the joy of marriage in the midst of that 6.5 years. That was God's grace to us. And yet God's grace, as you're saying it to you, was the opposite. It was short. And, I imagine it's really hard for people who are listening to even hear some people like you and I talking about losing someone we love to cancer as having anything to do with God's grace. And yet that's not putting on a face. I know it's not for you and it's not for me. Somehow, God, I guess, met both of us in that hardest of journeys in our unique way. And then your husband's, my daughter's. That's an amazing story. And you were right. I mean, you were just still dealing with the cancer yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Can't imagine.
Yeah. Yeah. Very interesting time. It was a crazy time for sure. And going along with what you were saying about that people are going, how is this God's grace? I think that often in the Christian community, we look at a miraculous healing as being the ultimate miracle. But I look at heaven as being the ultimate miracle. Like heaven's the goal, right? And so I often think, because grief is real, and you got to go through it, and you got to, I say you never get over it, but you get out from underneath it. you can somehow get on top of it, right? And breathe again, laugh again. And we grieve, and it's normal and human, and Jesus wept and all of that. But in the end, heaven is what we're all kind of aiming for. And so
Yeah.
that's the ultimate. And certainly people go at different ages, and it stinks. Like, I'm sure with your daughter, you're thinking, oh
Yeah.
God, what would Christmas be like if what would she be doing now? And all of that kind of thing that you do when
Sure.
you lose a child, right? And I just kind of picture my husband. I had a dream, actually. I prayed for a dream because I
Mm.
heard that people had dreams, right? Would dream and their loved one would show up in a dream. And so I prayed, Lord, give me a dream, give me a dream. And it took a while, but I had a dream. And I can see that dream, Tommy, as vividly now as I saw that night. And I walked out of my bedroom into my family room, and my father-in-law, who died 2 years before my husband from pancreatic cancer, and my husband were both sitting in my family room, and they had their elbows on their knees and their head and their hands, and they just looked exhausted. And I walked over to him, oh my gosh, hi, how are you doing? And they said, this is so hard. And immediately I thought, the weight of the world, like we don't notice it because we're in it and we deal with it all the time. But I think when we get to heaven, there is going to be this lightness that we don't feel here, that there is this heaviness that can be the weight of the world. And so I said, well, what's going on? What are you doing? And they told me that my father-in-law hadn't chosen his job yet, but my husband had. And my husband told me that he was working in the sacristy. So that's a word I never use.
Sacristy?
Sacristy, right. But it's where holy garments are kept. It's where the holy garments, holy whatever, wine, if there's holy wine, holy whatever, that's where it's kept in the sacristy. And immediately I thought, well, of course you are. Of course you are. Because we joke sometimes, right? Oh my gosh, like you're when it's your time, hopefully years and years from now, people will say Tommy's probably golfing up in heaven, right? Whatever, we say things like that. But I just immediately knew that of course you're working in the sacristy. And just made total sense. And then he said, I'm so sorry, but this is so hard. And I said, go, you don't have to stay. Thanks, but go. And we said our goodbyes, and that was it.
Did you know the word sacristy before the dream?
Way back in the day, somewhere, I'm sure that word, whatever, I knew it as soon as he said it. I
Okay.
knew what it meant, and I knew it, and it made so much sense. And dreams, people can look at dreams, we talk about, is God's grace in this? How is God's grace in this? And dreams, is it for real? And does God send you dreams? And
Sure.
people can believe whatever they want to believe. If you believe that
Sure.
God doesn't come to you in dreams, or things don't come in dreams, that's fine. That's okay. If you believe they do, that's fine. Everybody can believe however they want. For me, that dream was an answer to prayer. And that dream just was just so real. I dream every night and don't remember my dreams. But that
Right.
dream, I remember every bit of it.
That's
And
amazing.
so, yeah.
So what year was all of this?
That was March of 2009 that he passed away.
2009. Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
So 15 years. 15 years. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. So that changes everything. How old were your children at that point?
My kids were all in their 20s. I had a son in the Navy at the time, and otherwise the other kids were nearby. And I have 5 kids, and I know it's crazy. We were reproducers, I guess. I don't know, but we had 5 kids, and we have a Dominican son. So one of them I didn't birth. And so anyway, so they were nearby, which was great. My son had to come from from the Navy. They let him come home, of course, and he felt bad that it was kind of too late, but it changed my kids, right? I mean, it changes your whole life because it changes your day to day. When you lose somebody who has been part of your day to day, it's way different than losing a friend that you touch base with once in a while, which is still painful,
Sure.
But when your whole life is shaken up and turned upside down, it's different. And because I had to
Totally.
figure it out. I had to figure out, well, what does this even mean? What's life going to be? And my kids had to kind of figure it out too. And my youngest son, Noah, was getting his undergrad at the time. And he ended up getting a PhD as a cancer researcher.
Wow.
Yeah.
I assume as a result of what
Mhm.
you both went through.
Yeah. He changed what he was doing in his undergrad, and now he's Dr. Noah.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. Ah, so you have this massive void in your life, I guess filled with grief, but still a void. Where'd you go from there?
I wasn't sure what I was going to do when I was healthy enough to go back to work. When I was finally ready, I owned businesses. I owned a golf course, as a matter of fact, it was one of my businesses. And I didn't know if I was going to go
Bless you.
back. Yeah. Yeah, right. I wasn't sure if I was going to go back into my businesses, but I had people running them. And so they were fine, and or back into the nonprofit world. And so I decided, I saw a man who was running a nonprofit, Rays of Hope International, that my father and I had started 10 years before then. And I ran into the director in between Christmas and New Year's. And I said, "Hey, do you need any help? You need a bookkeeper?" And he said, "Oh, yeah, a bookkeeper. That would be great." So January 1st, 2010, I started as part-time bookkeeper. And 12 days later, there was an earthquake in Haiti that killed 200,000 people. So within a couple weeks, I was in Haiti. And I was in Haiti at least part of every month for the next several years.
Wow. So, I mean, your life is crazy. So you went from your cancer to your husband's cancer to just beginning with this nonprofit that is in your family. And within a couple of weeks, the earthquake in Haiti, and now you're spending most of your time there.
Mhm.
Did
Right.
it feel as crazy as it sounds?
I think I didn't have time for it to feel crazy, but the thing that I learned, I learned so much, but one of the things that I learned is that service is the greatest healer of grief. I've never read that in a book, and I've never been told that. But when you get outside yourself and you serve others, it is such a healer. It is a healer for so many things, but definitely for grief, it is so healing.
I couldn't agree more. And not just for grief, for all kinds of suffering. There were two kind of mantras that my wife and I had during our daughter's cancer and really during the grief after the first one, which I've talked about at other times on this podcast, was find joy. And it was this idea in our minds that in the midst of just the heaviness and the dark cloud, it was critical for us to aggressively go to find joy at some place in life. And that was like number one. And the other thing is do something for someone else. Because, when you're dealing with suffering or grief, it is so all consuming and all about you, and your pain and your suffering. And I found right exactly to your point, when you serve, when you help someone else, it gets you out. It's like you burst through that bubble of grief and pain. And it is like one of the, as you say, it's just one of the most healing things, intentional things that you can do in the worst of times. totally counterintuitive, but yeah, I totally agree with you.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was really good for me. And I was able to do a lot. But I wanted to live right, right? I wanted to honor my husband with the way I lived the rest of my life because, like I said, he was a great guy. If you knew him, you'd have loved him. You guys would have gotten along great, Tommy. I know you would have. And it reminds me of him. Yeah, I think you guys share a heart. But I wanted to know I was doing it right. And so I heard about a guy who was going to live a year like Jesus and then write a book about it. And I couldn't wait to read the book because I thought, oh my gosh, you give a year to something, you give a year to living like Jesus. No matter who you think Jesus is, it's going to transform your life, right? And then
Exactly.
yeah, but I read the book and it was more about wearing sandals and having a drink at the bar with strangers. And I thought, God, how would I do that differently? Because I was waiting for the big moment, right? And it never came. And then I thought, well, God is love. John says that God is love. So God is love, not that God loves, but that God is love. But then what is love? So if you really understand love, then you should be living the right way. Then you should be walking the right path, doing the right things, right? And so I decided I was going to take a year and figure out the true meaning of love. So I took for 1 Corinthians 13, love is patient, love is kind, does not envy, does not boast. I took one word or phrase a month and focused on it. And the first thing I found out is there's 14 words and phrases. So it took me a little longer here.
I was counting in my mind. I was going, well, 12, that really is convenient. And I thought,
Right. Yeah.
well,
So yeah, that's okay. So it took me a little longer than a year, but the things that I found out about love, like if all I would have ever understood in my life is what love is patient, the very first word is, if I would have stopped after the first month, my life would have been changed. And so that it's that times 14. Like it was an incredible journey. And it took till the end of the month, always, every single month, it took until the end of the month for God to hit me upside the head with something. And then I'd go, now I get it. Now I finally get it. And so it was an incredible time. And like I said, the things that I know about love, I just want to shout from the rooftops. There's a lot of things about love that are misunderstood. And I
well,
think
you did that kind of deep dive. I mean,
Mhm.
that's, gosh, it's such a abused word, in so many ways. And so you do that kind of deep dive. I can't imagine how life-changing that would be. So can you give me an example of like one of the words and what surprised you?
Sure. So the toughest, one of the ones that I just wanted to put off, I didn't want to do it in order. In fact, I didn't do it in order. I did put it off, was love keeps no record of wrongs.
Oh,
Because
wow.
right? Because you might forgive, but you don't forget the things that happened to you. So what does that possibly mean that love keeps no record of wrong? And that month I was asked by a pastor to show him a water project that I was working on in Haiti. And I said, of course I would. And so he brought 7 other guys with him from the US. And I brought 2 of my Haitian friends who both happen to be men with us to translate. And they knew the water project inside and out. And so we got out to where we were staying. And it was a little place with 2 rooms. And each room had 4 twin size beds. So there were 8 American men, 2 Haitian men, and me. But we brought an air mattress and we brought a couple cots. And I'm thinking, oh, there's room. We can move stuff around, no problem. And so I've got it all worked out in my head. When the head guy called me over, the pastor called me over, Kim, can I talk to you? I'm like, sure. And he said, did you see the rooms? And I'm thinking, buddy, there's nothing else to see because it was a little. And then I thought, oh, he's going to think I want my own room. And so I'll just say, well, I don't care if there's other people in the room. And he'll say, or I'll say, actually, I'll say, oh, it's okay. I'll sleep outside. And he'll say, no, 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 you can't sleep outside. And then I'll say, well, I don't care if there's other people in the room. And he'll go, great, because there's only so much space. So I said, well, it's okay. I'll sleep outside. And he said, good, because we have men on this trip that would not be comfortable with a woman in their room. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, what did I just do? I can't believe I just did this to myself. But I did. I offered, like I couldn't take it back. There's nothing I could do. So I looked around and I saw it was
A little clueless, you might say.
I know. Well, I'm thinking, what's going to happen in hot Haiti? You only go in your room to sleep at night. You're not hanging out in there because it's so hot. And I don't know. I wear pajamas to bed. I mean, I'm not sure what he thought was going to happen or why uncomfortable. But I said I'd sleep outside. I had to figure it out for 5 nights. And so I saw this piece of
5
plywood.
nights.
Yeah, I saw this piece of plywood and it was kind of on top of a couple of things, whatever they were. And I thought, well, if I put the air mattress under there, at least if it rains, I won't get wet. So first night, I get all set. And I'll tell you, there are things in Haiti that aren't the greatest things. There are snakes and there are tarantulas and there are chupacabras or whatever is lurking in the bushes of Haiti. And I thought, Lord, please don't let anything land on me or crawl on me in the middle of the night. And so I blew up the air mattress, went to bed the first night, and it was so loud because horns were honking and dogs were barking and finally that died down, maybe midnight, I'm not even sure. And then a couple hours later, voodoo drums started in the distance, and then that kept me awake. And so maybe 5 a.m. or something, I was able to finally get some sleep. So first night came and went, no problem. Second night, same thing. Blow up the air mattress. Air mattress, by the way, held air for about an hour. And then I'm on gravel. So again, flat air mattress, the noise, the dogs, the horns, the voodoo drums. Finally, I'm sleeping. But I woke up because there was something on my leg. And I'm just praying, Lord Jesus, don't let it bite me. Does Haiti have the anti-venom to whatever is going to maim me right now? Are they going to be able to airlift me to Miami in time to save a limb? What is going to happen? And I slowly lifted my head and I slowly opened my eyes. And it was a chicken. It was a dang chicken on my leg. I shoot it away and went, oh my word. But I didn't know whether to be mad because it woke me up from the little bit of sleep I was getting, or happy because it was a chicken. So whatever. Third night came and went, no problem. Fourth night, same thing. The dogs, the horns, the voodoo drums. Finally, I'm sleeping. But again, I'm woken up because again, there's something on my leg. And again, I am scared to death. But what is going to hurt me, harm me, whatever it's going to do. So I slowly lifted my head and I slowly opened my eyes. And it was the dang chicken. Again, the chicken. I didn't know whether to be mad or happy that it was a chicken, but again, it was the chicken. Fifth night came and went without incident because on the fourth night, we had chicken for dinner. So we had no problem on the fifth night. And I got to say, at first, I was angry. I thought, man, I hope my sons wouldn't treat a woman like this. Like, I didn't even feel like it was just a woman thing. I felt like it was a subhuman thing. Like, you're so much better than me that you get to sleep inside and I am lowly, whatever, and I have to sleep outside. Like, it didn't make sense to me at all in my head. And I'm like, Lord, you got to help me deal with this because I'm kind of I'm mad at these guys. And then
I'm mad at them. I mean, I can't even fathom them allowing that to happen, whether 4 men go outside and sleep or whether they get over themselves and let you in. It's kind of like, it's almost so unbelievable. I don't know. I'm mad at them. Now I'm work on your book.
Well, I was working on Love Keeps No Record of Wrongs. And I'd been searching for it the whole month. This was at the end of the month that this happened. And so I'm thinking, okay, does this have anything to do with it? And then it's like, oh my gosh, now I understand. Now I get what it is. And like we said, you don't forget the things that happen to you. You don't forget. You might forgive, you don't forget. So how do you not keep a record of wrongs? And then I understood what it is. And what it is the narrative changes. The story doesn't change. Whatever happens to you, happens to you. But you get to pick the narrative. You get to pick, if you're in a traffic jam, you can be the guy honking your horn and stomping your feet and and yelling out your window, or you can be the guy in the car next door listening to your podcast and just kicking back, realizing you're stuck in traffic, no big deal. And so you get to pick. You get to pick the narrative. And so love that
Wow.
no record of wrongs just changes the narrative. And then there's nothing to keep a record of wrong about.
That is so powerful. And I mean, it can be applied in so many different ways. That idea of, you get to pick the narrative. The story is the story, but you get to pick the narrative. And I mean, I'm thinking about it just kind of in my own context. And one of the things I wrote about in Space to Breathe Again was choosing to think about our cars as a hidden sanctuary. That we could take our cars, and it's a quiet time. It's a time often we're by ourselves, and we can choose the narrative. Is it a place for road rage, or is it a hidden sanctuary? Take your pick. It's what it. But that's amazing, and I love that angle, and it definitely gets at that. You can't forget, but you can pick the narrative. That's fantastic. So each one of those men, did you send them a copy of your book?
I didn't, and I've told that story a couple times, and I have wondered if any of them have ever heard me tell the story, and they chose their own narrative, right? So they're going to remember it however they remember it, and that's going to be their story. I mean, I don't think I ever told them that a chicken was on my leg or that I was afraid of tarantulas. I mean, I offered to sleep outside. Like I couldn't really be mad at them because I offered, but I was. But then I'm not.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you had a year-long deep dive into love, and there's so much that's great about that. I mean, if you're going to do a deep dive into something, to do it in that kind of structured way with love is so powerful and life-changing. But I even just love the idea of devoting ourselves to something that we know could be life-changing for the entirety of a whole year, and how that has the ability to transform us. So, and I'm guessing, and I want to hear more from you on this, there's a residual from it. It's not just, oh, I finished the year, now I'm going to go back to not loving anymore. There's this residual. So I'd love to hear kind of what after the year, how did that year impact moving forward for you?
Oh my gosh. And every aspect of my life. And by the way, before I devoted this year, this 14 months, I had a hard time selecting an entree when I'd go out to eat. So a commit to an entree was one thing, commit to a whole 14 months of doing something was kind of a big, huge stretch for me. But I did it. So, if you're thinking, how do you put that kind of time? But I did. But everything changed because I now understand what love is. That love is who you are. Love is walking and talking and living and breathing and giving. Love is all encompassing. Love is not something you hang up when you get to the office or you put in the closet when you get home. Love is always who you are. And how you decide to live love is up to you. What you decide to do is up to you. And if you understand that love is who you are, that it's all encompassing, it's not an emotion like fear. You watch a scary movie that night, you go to sleep and you hear every creak and every bang and every bump because you're afraid because of the movie, but you don't live in fear. Fear is an emotion. Love is not an emotion. Love is who you are. And you often think of love as you hear it's a two-way street, or you want to give love to get love. And that's just not true. Love is 100% on you. You have no control of anybody. You only control yourself. You control an infant when you bring them home from the hospital. You decide when they eat and when they sleep and when they have a bath. But 6, 7, 8 months later, your Tupperware is all over the kitchen floor and pots and pans are banging, and you realize you've lost control. And I promise you, you'll never get it back again. You only control yourself, right? And so you can't control any love that comes back to you. Love is special in that it does come back, but not maybe the way you think it's going to. And if you're loving to get love, you're setting yourself up for loneliness and disappointment and heartache. And so how love has changed my life, the understanding of love is as I walk in it, one month built on the next, I did love is patient, but then when I was doing love is kind, I was working on love is patient and then working on love is kind for the next and the next. So it built throughout the time, and every single one was just huge. Every single one was huge. And so the way I look at people, I love people. I've always loved people. But I love people. Like, that's kind of our only job, right? They ask you, what are we supposed to do? Well, love one another, right? And love yourself and love each other, love God. And so it's kind of all we have to do. Don't judge, just love. Just love. You're not going to change anybody. Sometimes people get into debates, right? And they can get heated at Thanksgiving. Mashed potatoes are all over the walls or whatever because you don't agree with politics or whatever it is. But you're not going to change their opinion when you argue that way. That nothing's going to change. So my attitude changed from everybody needs to be more like me to everybody is special and incredible and an individual and living their life the way they believe they were created to live it. And so it's just freeing to just love because there's no judgment. There's no room for it. And so you love people for who they are, where they are, and watch everybody's journey because we all have one.
Yeah. Well, it would be really interesting to think back to, our conversation about, God's grace at the beginning. It would be so interesting if others, maybe just a few that are listening to this said, well, that would be interesting if I also did this deep dive into love for 12 months. And, what would be the lessons that they might learn about love is patient, love is kind, love keeps no record of wrongs. What would God teach them about that? How would their character be formed if they did the same experiment? And imagine while there'd be these commonalities, there'd also be these unique differences of what would happen if someone just mimicked your experiment.
Yeah, I think it'd be so interesting. I'd love to sit down and talk with that person. It would be fun. Just compare notes for sure.
Yeah. So thinking about this, because I think there's so many powerful things, and we do forget often in the Christian community that the great commandment is to love. It's not to change people's minds or make converts or, shove something down someone's throats. It's just to love them. So, I think that's so important. But now kind of on the other side of it, and I love your book title, Love Is, what would be a step in the right direction that as you talk with people, as you share kind of this life-changing journey on the other side of some of the hardest that life has to give to anybody, what would you suggest for someone to do with this conversation?
Well, if you want to know them all and hear all the stories, you can buy the book. But
Absolutely, yes.
But I would say, really, there's just a couple simple things. When you love, you're present. When you love, you're fully engaged in a conversation. Love is patient. That's what that means. You're fully there. You're not thinking about, like I used to, the soccer game that you got to go to later, or who needs to be where, or what you're going to have for dinner. You're fully engaged. You're showing love to somebody by being fully present with them, whether it's someone you run into at the grocery store or your spouse or one of your kids. And so your love is fully engaged. Love loves people. And when you love people, you take people for who they are, and you just recognize that the world is a beautiful place because of our differences, not
Yeah.
in spite of our differences, but because of them. And so sometimes, like if you're driving down the road, you're mad, somebody just cut you off, instead of having an attitude like, oh my gosh, that guy, whatever, instead, thinking, well, what's going on in his life? Did he just get bad news? Something may happen, but show some loving compassion and truly love everybody. Sometimes people say, "Oh, I love everybody," but those darn Democrats or those Republicans, right? Well, guess
Yeah.
what? Then you don't love everybody, but love, you
Yeah.
got to strip away the labels. Don't
Yeah.
label people. Just call them by name and let them be who they're created to be.
Yeah. Certainly not kind of the point or something we talk about a lot on this podcast, but we really desperately need that message for the upcoming, year ahead of us, year and a few months, because it's just everything just gets ugly. And that's just not the way life is meant to be. The important things to discuss, important things for the country, but life is not meant to be ugly, and we're not meant to be ugly to each other. So that's a critical message just in that front. Not to mention, the desperate need for love in our families. The presence. So anyway, God, that's so fantastic. Well, I do think there are so many aspects of what you're talking about. This choice that was not in your typical makeup to devote a year to your life, and then seeing the residual change that's made, in your life. Now that book came out in 2021. So, right.
Mhm.
So we're now 3+ years of that just continuing to have impact in you and the people that you touch. How powerful that would be for other people. So I want to encourage everybody to buy the book, to get the book, to just simply create the space to do this deep contemplative dive into your journey and into the lessons and how that might apply to them. So a couple of things, I guess, in closing, Kim. How do people connect with you and what you're doing? Because I know you're giving your life to this. This wasn't a book and just something you talk about every now and then, but you're giving your life to this. So how can people connect to you, and how can they find your book? I mean, kind of know how to find books, but tell us.
Sure. Well, funny thing, I'm literally the only Kim Sorrelle spelled my way in the entire world because my last name is ridiculous. It has way too many letters, two R's, two E's, two L. So it's Sorrelle, Kim Sorrelle. KimSorrelle.com is my website. My book is available on all online booksellers and some brick and mortar stores as well. Barnes and Noble, whoever carries it, at different times. But so it's readily available. And yeah, I speak and I love meeting people and I love hearing from people. And so please do connect, and
Do you
it'd be
have a
fun.
favorite social media platform?
I'm on the social media, so I'm on Instagram and Facebook, LinkedIn mainly. And so, yeah, those
Great.
on social media, Kim Sorrelle. Yeah.
Well, we'll put all of that in the show notes with the correct spelling, Sorrelle, of your name, kimsorrelle.com. We'll put all of that in the show notes. And I just want to encourage people to, we kind of talked about this reframing of things and looking at things from a different perspective. And it's a great kind of challenge for all of us in the upcoming year. And I'm sure in any one of our individual circumstances, and with all the challenges and stresses, to love deeply and love well. It's perfect having this, very shortly after the whole series that it did on marriage, on Space for Life. So thank you so much, Kim. Really appreciate your story and your heart and your faithfulness in the really hard journeys of life. So thank you for being on Space for Life.
Oh, my word, this has been an honor and a privilege. Thank you so much for having me.
And of course, everyone, share this episode. We want to spread this message out in a huge way. So thank you so much, Kim.
Thank you.